Well, hello, good people. Mark Holmes here, and as always, I appreciate each and every one of you guys, as well as you ladies. I am here working on one of my many loves in life, and that is this red brick house. Um, a lot of people have heard a little bit about this um, and may not know everything that's gone into this place. And so while I'm working here on this, um, very tedious work here. And believe me, when you're dealing with an old house, you can't just do it like you would a house that you have now. There's a lot of stuff that you can't just use modern material and techniques to fix it. For example, if you use mercuric acid on the bricks to try and clean them, it'll introduce salt into it and it will destroy the bricks over time. So you can't clean it. You got to actually clean it. Lemon juice or vinegar. So this house, here's everything that we have learned about the red brick house. I've had numerous people, elderly people, who know a lot more about the history of the town than I do, and whose families have been part of that history. Um, a Miss Beverly came through. See, back in the 16 and 1700s, power was land ownership. And where we are right now in central Virginia, the Beverly family owned most of the land. All this was farmland. And they ended up deeding the land to a Revolutionary War soldier to be able to build the first schoolhouse in Augusta County. Now, there is in another location here in Augusta County a house that says it's the oldest schoolhouse in Augusta County, which was built in 1863. I'm sorry, 1833. But this one was actually built in 1820. Difference being this one hasn't been put on the National Registry just yet. But from what I'm told, that this is actually the third oldest masonry school in the country. Because at that time, bricks were a premium. Now there's another historic house that's down the street from here that's older. Um, this house, which was the schoolhouse, was modeled in the same style, that same federal style of home. And that was nobility. Basically, you got some money. So it was first the schoolhouse. And there's a lot of things about the house that I've learned going through. It's almost like archaeology. That the steps, of course, aren't the original steps here. We believe the steps are actually on the backside. The windows over here were probably put in probably the mid 1800s because the original windows would have been 6/6. I think I have some sashes down in the basement that are original sashes. And the reason being is the glass came from Europe on ships, 6 inch by 10 inch pieces. So it would be 6 lights and 6 lights. But these were considered an upgrade, and so that changed. The fireplaces now have been closed up because hot belly stoves became high tech. And so instead of having a fireplace, you had a pot belly stove. And so that's why the fireplaces are all flat. You may end up opening some of them up. So then the American Civil War happened. And the South, of course, was definitely touched hard by the Civil War. One of the closing battles, the last month of the war, was the Battle of Waynesboro. Lasted about 20 minutes. George Armstrong Custer, General Sheridan, came into the town cross the South River and chase the Confederates out of town. This house was used as a Civil War hospital. I believe the doctor, don't quote me, is buried right there in the cemetery, big headstone. Also, too, there's some Confederate soldiers that are buried there that we believe may have died here at the hospital, 1865, and are buried next door. So there's that. What we also know is, after the Civil War, Robert E. Lee, who did not give license to use his name very often, did give it to the Masons for the Lee Lodge. So for a number of years, this was known as the Lee Lodge. I'll be damned. Never noticed that before. It's got a little like key, a little screwdriver set. That's right there in the handle. So it was a Masonic lodge, which the Lee Lodge is still in existence here in Waynesboro. It's just not here anymore at this spot. Sometime after that, we know that this became owned by the town's blacksmith. And here's where it gets to be really interesting, because we met Len Fields some years back, and Len Fields filled us in on a bit more of the history. So, Len Fields, I guess it would be her great-great-grandfather was the town blacksmith. Okay? In his will, he ended up giving the place to his daughter. And what you have to understand is, Mary Arnold, which the house is also known as the Arnold House. Mary Arnold was a landowner, which at that time didn't really happen. Women didn't own anything. Yeah, so you already have that as a part of history. And Lynn is supposed to come through and get me a copy of the will to show where that was. Then, also, Miss Beverly, who's a descendant of the noble Beverly family that originally owned pretty much all of what we see here that used to be farmland, she's supposed to actually bring me some of the original paperwork as well that we're going to be able to mount into the place. So when Mary died, she ended up willing the house to her husband. Somewhere in the 1950s, the city of Waynesboro bought the house because the main drag through town was actually going to go right behind here. And so they needed this for the right-of-way. But fortunately, the highway never was built. So they kept it as a rental property, and it had been rented out for many, many, many years. Many years. Until it became into disrepair, and the city decided, with the Walmart that's across the street, where you may actually hear the music, the Walmart radio on, was going to be torn down and sold. Enter a crazy man. A crazy man who was doing Grow Waynesboro, which was for small businesses, entrepreneurs, to try and have grants to help them get their business going. I ended up doing Grow Waynesboro and tried to get a grant. And what we had to do is we had to speak in front of a group of people that had to decide who the grants were going to go to. And I talked about restoring old houses. And that I had done a number of them here and wanted to continue to kind of grow my business doing just that. Everybody loved my presentation and things. Like I said, I didn't win, but it was a great experience. And that's where I met Ian. Ian, who is a computer business owner, said, "You are just the guy we've been looking for." And that night, about 9 o'clock, I saw this house for the first time. I fell in love with it, and I started doing some posts on Facebook. The power, that's right. Facebook does do some things that are good. Did some posts on Facebook, and a lot of people who were connected to the house, including a group called Save the Red Brick House, joined in the cause. We petitioned the city. I had to speak again in front of the town council. And now, here we are. That was in 2016. Unfortunately, because this was going to be the main drag through town, the zoning on the place had been changed to highway commercial, which meant you have to have space. Picture not the little road that's here. Picture, say, a 4-lane highway. You have to be able to drive off the highway, provide parking for every 400 square foot of space, and have enough area to turn around and re-enter the highway. And it's strictly business. The only way you could make it to, as a residence, would be the upstairs level would be living in, the lower level could be a business. And I didn't want to go through and destroy the upstairs and trying to make that work. I wanted to save this because, to me, this is a thing of beauty. It's a lot of work. Believe me, it's a lot of work. As my wife is over here picking off the paint of the trim here, as I've been working on this in between doing some of the other stuff to bring this back out to be repainted and done. But the things that we've discovered on here have been crazy. It's just every week you find out a new tad bit of information to know that Mary Arnold, this was her house. To understand that slaves behind the house here made the bricks. To understand that kids got their education here. To understand, in the biggest conflict, American conflict, that this was a part of it. To know that the town's blacksmith was here and making pieces that are still throughout the city. And now, this house can never be torn down. One of the things that I am proudest of on this is, when we got the house, in the deed says the house can never be torn down. It comes down as an act of God, so be it. But the house, nobody can buy it and tear it down to build something else. So that is my goal and will be my legacy. Hopefully, not anytime soon. I'll be dead and gone, but I will have been an integral part of this history, of this house, which is all part of our American history. Probably sound like a nut, but this house means a lot to me. And seeing the joy on the face of people who come by. Many of you don't give a rat's ass about history or the past, but when I see like Mr. Shiflett, who comes through, who's a character and taught me a lot of the history of this place, and the joy it brings, or when Lynn comes through and says, my great-grandmother used to own this, my great-great-grandfather was the town blacksmith, and so happy it's being saved. It does my heart good, and it makes me realize all the work that's going into this has a purpose. And that's life, friends, having a purpose. Yeah. Hope you're having a great Sunday. See you soon.